All right, thank you all for attending today's hearing. We'll go ahead and get started. This hearing will please come to order. I'm Robert Sachs, and I have been designated by Kristen Thompson of the Cannabis Control Division to serve as the hearing officer for this public comment hearing. The subject matter of this public comment hearing is proposed administrative rules concerning the New Mexico Cannabis Regulation Act. Today is March 1st, 2022, and the time is 9:04 a.m. I and our court reporter, I and our staff members from the Regulation and Licensing Department are gathered at the Gary Carruthers State Library building located at 1209 Camino Carlos Rey in Santa Fe, New Mexico. In light of health concerns related to the ongoing COVID-19 public health emergency and in an effort to make this hearing as accessible to the public as possible, this public comment hearing is being conducted with the public able to attend via internet video conferencing technology in order to make public comment on the proposed rule language. The purpose of this hearing is for the Cannabis Control Division of the Regulation and Licensing Department to receive public comment on proposed new administrative rules regarding commercial and medical cannabis activity. The rules that have been proposed by the CCD at this time give particular attention to rules regarding cannabis packaging and licensure. On behalf of Director Kristen Thompson and the Cannabis Control Division, I welcome everyone present at this hearing. Both in person to our staff members and our participants remotely. This hearing is being conducted pursuant to and in accordance with the provisions of the New Mexico Cannabis Regulation Act, sections 26-2C-1 through 26-2C-42 NMSA 1978, the Open Meetings Act, sections 10-15-1 through 10-15-4, the State Rules Act, sections 14-4-1 through 14-4-11 NMSA 1978, and 1.24.25 NMAC, the default procedural rule for rulemaking as promulgated by the Attorney General. Public notice of this hearing was advertised in the New Mexico Register on February 22nd, 2022. Copies of the public notice, as well as copies of the proposed rules and copies of research and documentation relied upon by the Cannabis Control Division in the development of these proposed rules, have been available from the Regulation and Licensing Department office since the notices were published and are available to the public attending this hearing via the RLD website for the Cannabis Control Division at ccd.rld.state.nm.us. Copies of the proposed rules continue to be available by request to anyone who requests them. I ask everyone physically present in the office today to silence their cell phones and ask that any extended conversation be held outside of the room. For those attending via video conference technology, I ask that you ensure that your microphones remain muted until such time as you are called upon by me to make your public comment. This hearing is scheduled to end not later than 4 p.m. today. Due to the large number of participants and in order to allow as many people as possible to present their public comments on the proposed rules within the time we have for the hearing, I will be limiting public comment for each presenter to 5 minutes. This time deadline will be strictly enforced, and when a presenter's allotted time has expired, the presenter's microphone will be muted and we will move on to the next person. Presenters will be able to see a 5-minute clock on the screen that will start when the presenter begins speaking. Please consider this time limit carefully before you speak and make every effort to focus your comments and get to the heart of any concerns or issues you wish to address as quickly as possible. If you would like to submit written testimony, we will accept written testimony after the conclusion of your 5-minute public comment up until the close of the public comment hearing today. You must submit your written comments no later than the end of today's public comment hearing if you wish your written comments to become a part of the official record for this hearing. If you previously submitted your written testimony regarding the proposed rules, you do not need to resubmit any documents previously submitted. You may submit public comment via email to ccd.publiccomment@state.nm.us or by visiting ccd.rld.state.nm.us. www.state.nm.us and enter in your public comment on the March 1st hearing page. As this public hearing is being conducted via the video conference format as opposed to a traditional sign-in sheet, for those in attendance via teleconference who wish to speak regarding the proposed rules, we will utilize the registration login for WebEx to record all those who attend and/or participate in the hearing. I will have a member of the RLD staff assigned responsibility for including the names of attendees appearing by video conference to the attendance sheet. Let the record show that present here in the Gary Carruthers State Library building with me is Carolina Barrera, Deputy Director of Business Operations for the Cannabis Control Division of the Regulation and Licensing Department, who will be making presentations on the proposed rules for the Cannabis Control Division, or CCD. This is a formal proceeding and a court reporter has been contracted to record these proceedings. The court reporter will record the proceedings and the transcript will become part of the rule hearing record. Therefore, persons recognized to address the hearing attendees and the RLD are asked to identify yourself for the record each time you address the body and speak loudly and clearly so the recorder can pick up your comments. This hearing will be conducted in the following manner. Ms. Barrera from the division will present exhibits to be included in the rulemaking hearing record. I, as the hearing officer, will rule on the admissibility of the exhibits offered for admission. Exhibits admitted into evidence by the division will be available for review by members of the public at ccd.rld.state.nm.us. All public comments that have been submitted and will be admitted as exhibits for this hearing will likewise be available for review by members of the public on that same website. Any additional exhibits admitted into the record for this matter during the course of this hearing will also be made available for the public to review on the Cannabis Control Division's website. After Ms. Barrera makes her presentation on behalf of the Cannabis Control Division and offers exhibits and their admission has been ruled upon, I will open the hearing for comments from the audience. Each person making public comment may speak regarding any part of the proposed rules. Please make reference to the individual rule parts or subsections to which you refer. You may refer to other parts of the proposed rules that reasonably relate to the part of the rule being discussed or which relate to your comments. The RLD does not follow the rules of evidence, and therefore I, as hearing officer, may, in the interest of efficiency, exclude or limit comment or questions deemed irrelevant, redundant, or unduly repetitious. The decision as to whether such exhibits, testimony, commentary, or other evidence is irrelevant, redundant, or unduly repetitious shall be made by me, the hearing officer. Again, please be aware that each presenter will be allowed only 5 minutes of testimony. After identifying yourself for the record, I encourage you to make the most of your allotted time by moving directly to the issues or subjects of the proposed rules you wish to address to the RLD. At the conclusion of your 5 minutes, your microphone will be silenced. After a person has testified or offered comment, as hearing officer, I may ask questions for the purpose of clarifying a person's comments. This public hearing is intended to provide the public with an opportunity to voice opinions on the proposed rule. In order to maximize the amount of time available for individuals to make public comment, only I will ask any clarifying questions that are deemed to be necessary. At the conclusion of this rule hearing, the Cannabis Control Division staff will review the information received and will conduct discussions and take final action such as amending, adopting, tabling, and so forth on the proposed rules. The public hearing is now open. Ms. Barrera, at this time, do you have any exhibits to introduce into evidence?
Hearing Officer Sachs, I have the following exhibits to enter into evidence. Exhibit 1, legal notice of proposed rulemaking published in the New Mexico Register, Volume 33, Issue 4, published February 22nd, 2022. Exhibit 2, notice of proposed rulemaking sent to interested parties. Exhibit 3, proposed draft rule 16.8.1 amendments. Exhibit 4, proposed draft rule 16.8.2 amendments. Exhibit 5, proposed draft rule 16.8.3 amendments. Exhibit 6, proposed draft rule 16.8.8 amendments. Exhibit 7, Proposed Draft Rules 16.8.11 Amendments. Exhibit 8, Cannabis Rules Alaska. Exhibit 9, Cannabis Rules California. Exhibit 10, Cannabis Rules Colorado. Exhibit 11, Cannabis Rules Maine. Exhibit 12, Cannabis Rules Massachusetts Medical. Exhibit 13, Cannabis Rules Massachusetts Recreational. Exhibit 14, Cannabis Rules Michigan. Exhibit 15, Cannabis Rules Oregon. Exhibit 16, Cannabis Rules Washington. Exhibit 17, public comment submitted by Alex Spray Ike of CDP LLC. Exhibit 18, public comment submitted by Christina Caffrey of Ultra Health. And Exhibit 19, public comment submitted by Jesse Hunt on behalf of R Greenleaf.
Exhibits 1 through 19 are hereby admitted into the record. Ms. Barrera, are there any other exhibits to enter into the record at this time?
Hearing Officer Sachs, there are no additional exhibits.
Thank you, Ms. Barrera. Any person wishing to testify shall do so when they are recognized. For those appearing via video conference who wish to provide public comment, if you would like to provide public comment, first open the participants section and raise your hand. To do this, first click on the participants button at the bottom right of the WebEx window. Once you do that, you will see a small hand icon in the bottom right corner of the WebEx window. If you click on the hand icon, our staff will see that you have raised your hand and will allow you to provide public comment when it's your turn. Please be aware that at this time it is estimated that there are a total number of around 18 persons who are in attendance at today's hearing, many of whom will offer public comment. If a person who testifies wishes to submit an exhibit for this hearing, which has not already been admitted into the record, that person will be required to identify the proposed exhibit and describe the contents of the exhibit. As hearing officer, I will then rule on the admission of the proposed exhibit. Upon admissibility, each exhibit will be marked and numbered and entered into the record. If a person who testifies has submitted an exhibit for this hearing, which has already been admitted into the record, the person is requested to identify that exhibit at the beginning of the person's testimony today. At this time, each proposed rule will be introduced into the record. I will then open the floor to members of the audience for testimony and comments on the proposed rules. To be clear, this hearing is an opportunity for testimony and comments to be presented by those who wish to provide public comment on the proposed rules. This hearing will not be conducted as a question and answer session. If you have questions regarding the proposed rules, you are certainly free to include those questions in your public comment. The division will respond to your public comments at the time when the division issues its concise explanatory statement regarding all comments received. The division will not be responding individually to those making comments on the proposed rules. The division will publish a comprehensive, concise explanatory statement responding to all comments provided by the public at a later time, in keeping with the requirements of the New Mexico Administrative Rule 1.24.25 and MAC. Ms. Barrera, please identify yourself for the record and introduce each rule that has been proposed by the RLD and is subject to public comment at today's hearing.
Officer Sachs, I apologize for that technical error. My name is Carolina Barrera. I am the Deputy Director of Business Operations for the Cannabis Control Division for the Regulation and Licensing Department of New Mexico. Before we begin, I would like to state that the Cannabis Control Division openly and honestly wish to learn from the public today about concerns and suggestions related to the rules which have been proposed. In recognition of the limited time we have available today for public comment on those proposed rules, and in order to maximize the time available for the large number of individuals wishing to submit public comment, I will endeavor to keep my summary of the proposed rules brief. The purpose of the rulemaking proposals to NMAC 16.8.1, 2, 3, 8, and 11 is to make public rules related to the licensure as required by the Cannabis Regulation Act. 16.8.1 definitions. The objective of Part 1 is to set forth the general provisions that apply to all of Chapter 8 and to all persons affected or regulated by Chapter 8 of Title 16. Part 1 standardizes definitions in order to provide clarity around the rules contained herein. The proposed amendments to be discussed at the hearing will include changes to definitions corresponding to proposed amendments to 16.8.2 NMAC, 16.8.6 NMAC, and 16.8.11 NMAC, as well as licensing processes generally. 16.8.2 licensing and operational requirements for cannabis establishments. The objective of Part 2 is to ensure the safe production, testing, sale, and consumption of commercial and medical cannabis. The proposed amendments to be discussed at the hearing will include changes to application requirements for licensure for various cannabis. 16.8.3 packaging, labeling, advertising, marketing, and commercial display requirements for cannabis product. The objective of Part 3 is to ensure cannabis and cannabis products are properly labeled and packaged to ensure consumer and medical patients have an accurate understanding of the product they are consuming, while ensuring child-resistant packaging prohibits access of products by minors. Advertising and marketing requirements set guidelines for how cannabis and cannabis products may be marketed to consumers. 16.8.6 health and safety, food and product safety, environmental impacts, and natural resources. The objective of Part 6 is to ensure the health, safety of employees of licensees, to protect the health and safety of consumers ingesting cannabis products, to reduce environmental impacts, and to encourage sustainable practices among licensees, and protect natural resources used in the production of cannabis products. Proposed rules to Part 6 include rules related to health and safety, as well as food and product safety, to replace emergency rules in the same area. 16.8.7 quality control, inspection, and testing of cannabis product. The objective of Part 7 is to ensure cannabis products are subject to quality control through means including inspection and testing of cannabis products. Amendments to Part 7 will not be discussed today in today's rule hearing.
Thank you, Ms. Farrell. At this point, we will move to public testimony. As each person is permitted to testify, they are reminded as follows. You have 5 minutes for your presentation. When your time ends, your microphone will be muted. So at this time, we will put up the 5-minute clock and begin public comment. Mr. Last, if you can identify the first commenter for the record, we will then unmute that person. And just a reminder to please identify yourself for the record, your name, who you represent, if anyone other than yourself, and then you will begin.
Hearing Officer Sachs, I'm still waiting for first person to step up to speak.
Okay, it looks like we do have some people signed up, a Shaw Elmer. So if you could unmute their microphone, we will get started.
I'm sorry, just for the record, can I just have them spell their last name so I don't get it wrong on the record?
Yes, we will have them do that.
Thank you.
Hi, can you hear me? Good morning, CCD. My name is Shay Elmer. My last name for Christine is Elmer. I am actually calling in representation as a medical patient, as well as I work for New Mexico Alternative Care out of Farmington. And I have some concerns about some changes that are being proposed to the medical cannabis program. We have patients that we have helped get off of methadone and Suboxone and morphine and fentanyl and Oxycontin and all kinds of pain medications, as well as we have patients that we actually have on a cancer treatment protocol that we have created with a concentrated oil of whole plant cannabis oil called Rick Simpson oil or whole plant cannabis oil. And the dosages that this protocol calls for as a medical treatment is more as a daily regimen than 50 milligrams per day. Some of these suppositories that these cancer patients are on are 150 milligrams each. And by changing the medical program in the ways that are being proposed would not only detrimentally hurt these patients, but it would cost them outrageous amounts of money, which most patients that are on these terminally ill treatment protocols, they're living on Social Security and disability. They're barely making it as it is. I have seen things in the medical field as a medical assistant, as a home health care aide in hospice care, as an EMT in our county, and I have seen things that are absolutely unexcusable that the human race is living in. And by changing the medical program, we're making people who already have challenges in their day-to-day life just getting up and functioning. And now we're going to make it even more difficult for them to get the care that they need. And we're going to make it more expensive by doing these changes. So I would like to propose just leaving the medical program alone. It has been in place for 15 years. It is finally stable for the most part. There are always improvements that can be made anywhere, but do whatever you want to do with the recreational. Let's just leave the medical program alone for right now because it's going to uproot and change a lot of people's lives that it's finally helping and improving. That's all.
Thank you, Ms. Elmer, for your public comment. Mr. Last, if you can please identify the next person. As a reminder, please identify yourself for the record, and for our court reporter, please spell your last name.
Hearing Officer Sachs, the next speaker is Christina Caffrey.
All right, Ms. Caffrey, your microphone has been unmuted and you may begin.
Okay. Good morning. This is Christina Caffrey. Christina with a K, Kristina, Caffrey with a C, Caffrey. I'm here on behalf of Ultra Health, and I would also like to comment on the proposed rules regarding limitation of THC per serving and per container. So the first issue here is that CCV is proposing two different standards for edible cannabis finished products, one for commercial sale and one for medical sale. So having two standards is very difficult for licensees because it kind of doubles the work and also increases the risk that a mistake might be made and the higher concentration is sold to a non-medical purchaser. And so standardization with one standard is really the way to go. Now, I understand what the division may have in mind in proposing these these THC limitations for edibles. And that obviously is about the possibility of children accessing these products. So, but as the last speaker pointed out, medical patients often need a much higher amount of THC. And so instead of just thinking about limiting THC, the division can think about other solutions that do not burden medical patients or licensees. And the first thing is to create a better distinction between cannabis oils and concentrates versus cannabis edibles that actually incorporate food. So lots of cannabis oils and concentrates are technically edible in that you can ingest them by mouth, but they don't actually incorporate food. The cannabis food products are really in a different category, and those have a lot of different risks. So the cannabis oils and concentrates are typically packaged in very tight closing bottles, and most of them have a dropper mechanism. So both of those mechanisms really protect these products from any kind of child access. Plus, a lot of the oils and concentrates taste very grassy, right? So children are not going to overeat them. So because of these aspects, cannabis oils and concentrates can have much higher limitations of THC, and then we can create different THC limitations for the actual foods, the chocolates, the gummies, the lollipops. And this will allow licensees to standardize the THC amounts for both medical and non-medical. It will allow medical patients to continue getting the concentrations they need, and it can protect consumers. And so Ultra Health would recommend revisiting these THC limitations to serve these goals. Another goal, of course, is that all of licensees want to overtake the illicit market, and we want consumers to be buying from legal sources. And in order to compete against the illicit market, we need to make sure that we are giving consumers the best bang for their buck. And so we want to offer products that are in that sweet spot of affordable and economical, and giving consumers the amount of THC they want without breaking their wallet. And we all know that inflation is really affecting medical patients and non-medical consumers right now. And so THC limitations that are too stringent may discourage people from moving into legal sources because they can't get the amount of THC they want. And so we would just recommend creating more clear standards of actual food edibles versus cannabis oils and concentrates that may be ingested orally but are not quite food. And then we can offer higher THC limitations in that concentrate and oil category. And that is all I have for today. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Caffrey, for your comment. Mr. Last, at this point, can you identify for the record the next presenter?
Hearing Officer Sachs, I do not see anyone with their hands up at this moment.
All right, just as a reminder to all participants, you can raise your hand to signal to us that you would like to give public comment. At that point, we will unmute your microphone and you may give your public comment. If you have already given one, please put your hand down so that we know who is next. And it looks like we did have someone who just put their hand up, Ms. Joanne Farrell. Your microphone will be unmuted momentarily. Just a reminder to identify yourself for the record and spell your last name for our court reporter. You may begin.
My name is Joanne Farrell. It's F like Frank, A-R-R-E-L-L. I'm the CEO of Herbal Edibles. I'm one of the legacy manufacturers. I just want to reiterate some of the comments that were made by my colleagues, Shay and Christina. We're very concerned concerned that our medical patients are not going to be able to get the doses that they need at a reasonable price. There is a physical thing about it as well. People that are very sick, like some of the patients we treat, need 1,000 milligrams of THC. Some of them to stay alive. It's their life link. They're fighting cancer, and to tell them that they now have to swallow 20 pills at 50 milligrams a piece, they can barely get 2 or 3 down. So it's really not going to work for the medical program. I myself have a dose of about 200 milligrams to keep me off of opioids. It saved my life. And I need to stress how important these doses are for our patients. We're in one of the poorest states in the union. We need to keep the cost of this medication down for them. Accessibility has to be paramount. So I also have some concerns about recreational and getting these products to the dispensaries without needing to put THC on everything, like a capsule. And so I'm not going to bore you with any more detail, but I think that you really need to take a look at what you're proposing to do for the dosing limits for medical patients. It's a big concern. That's all I have.
Thank you, Ms. Farrell. Mr. Last, could you please identify our next participant?
The next speaker is Larry Love.
All right, Mr. Love, your microphone has been unmuted. Please identify yourself for the record and spell your name for our court reporter, and you may begin.
Thank you. My name is Larry Love, L-O-V-E. I've been an advocate here in New Mexico and with my medical marijuana radio show for the last 13 years. I've interviewed over 600 people. I've been studying the adult use and medical industries for the last 15 years. And the pattern is that medical products and medical dispensaries and medical programs will disappear in the next couple of years. I'm worried about New Mexico. I'm worried about it. I'm 53 years, excuse me, I've been smoking cannabis for 53 years and advocating. I don't want to see that happen here in New Mexico. I don't want to see it happen here anywhere in our country. This is a medicine. And if it wasn't for the fact that in 1996, California showed the world that cannabis was a medicine, we wouldn't be here today with adult use. So we owe the medical advocates and the people that have been advocating for medical cannabis, we owe them everything. This program needs to stay healthy. I agree with Joe in regards to the amount of THC and other cannabinoids that are needed for medical patients. I want medical, I'm hoping that there will be more medical-only dispensaries that will concentrate on the right kind of products for medical people. At the same time, I think we're going to have a terrible problem with analytical testing of cannabis. There's 2 labs here now. I don't think that's enough for the bottleneck that's going to be coming to us in 1 month from today, when we have a recreational use. There's not enough. There's going to be so much product out there that needs to be tested. It won't be able to get to the people, whether they're patients or whether they're adult users, in a timely manner. We need to get analytical labs here. I'm surprised at how little analytical, even regular labs are coming, but analytical is really something. Please, Robert, please get us some analytical labs so that we can have this medicine tested and the adult use stuff tested as well. There will be a bottleneck. Thank you very much. I'm Larry Love.
Thank you, Mr. Love, for your public comment. Mr. Last, could you please identify our next speaker?
Hearing Officer Sachs, I see no one ready to speak next.
All right, at this point, we will take a 5-minute recess to allow any additional persons to compile a comment and raise their hand. So we will regroup at 9:43. Thank you all for your patience, and we will see you soon. All right, we are back from our 5-minute recess. Thank you all for your patience. Mr. Last, please identify the next speaker, if any.
Hearing Officer Sachs, I see no one ready to provide additional public comment.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Last. At this point, we will now move to close the hearing with no additional comments. As described previously, the record of attendees from the WebEx video conferencing technology will be utilized to record the attendees at this hearing. That record will serve as the attendance sheet and will be marked as an exhibit and entered into the record. Ms. Barrera, do you have an additional exhibit to enter into the record at this point?
Hearing Officer Sachs, I ask admission of the transcribed record of this hearing to serve as the attendance sheet as Exhibit 20.
Exhibit 20, the transcribed record of this hearing is hereby admitted into the record and will be added to the exhibits for this hearing as soon as the court reporter has prepared the transcribed record and provided that transcription to the Cannabis Control Division. The comments submitted and discussion heard during the rule hearing will be considered by the Cannabis Control Division. The division will make a final decision on the proposed rules after consideration of the rulemaking record. You may also still submit your written comments no later than the close of this hearing today if you wish your written comments to become part of the official record for this hearing. Any rules adopted by the Cannabis Control Division will be filed at State Records and Archives in accordance with the State Rules Act and New Mexico Register publication deadlines. Publication of the rules, will also be made via the Regulation and Licensing Department's public website through the New Mexico Sunshine Portal website. The adopted rules become effective 30 days after they are filed at Records and Archives unless otherwise noted at the end of a section. Any rules not adopted may be postponed for future discussion at a definite time in the future or may be postponed indefinitely. Let the record show that this hearing was adjourned at 9:45 a.m. on March 1st, 2022. Thank you all for your attendance and your participation, and have a great rest of your day.